Sustainability Advisory Board meeting on Monday, December 4th. And would you like to take roll call, please?
Sure can. Margie Davy,
Here.
Lisa Marone,
Here.
Ken Osmond, Megan LaFond, Vic Oliver,
Here.
Brad Spanbauer,
Here.
Makisha Hayes, and that means we have quorum.
Good, thank you. Is there anyone here who'd like to make a public comment tonight? Anyone for a public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move ahead to the approval of the minutes. I would recognize a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes as written, please say aye.
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 We good with that?
Yep.
Okay. Phew. Couldn't remember. And now, we got all the business stuff done. We're moving on to the fun part of the meeting tonight. And I have to say, this is one of my favorite meetings of the whole year. We're so grateful for the students that we get to interact with during the year and with all the information that they've brought us, not just this year, but for many, many years. Major thanks to both Jim Feldman and Misty McPhee for involving students with us. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Jim, to introduce.
Thank you, Margie. So my name's Jim Feldman. I'm the director of the Environmental Studies program at UW Oshkosh. And I guess my job is just to direct the thanks back to you all for creating this forum. The students have been working all semester on coming up with 4 very different project ideas that they hope you'll take forward and consider after this meeting. But thank you again for making the time for this. It's been a really productive collaboration. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to our first group of students.
All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Peyton,
I'm Chris.
and we'll be proposing adding more waste and recycling bins to downtown Oshkosh. To begin, we want to give you all a brief overview as what we will be discussing. First, we're going to be talking about the issues that we're addressing, as well as our 2 proposals. Then we'll move into our barriers and our benchmarks. And lastly, we'll discuss our stakeholders and our costs and grants. As many of us know, Oshkosh is a fast-growing community with events going on downtown weekly, including the farmers market, live music, and Dora. We will be focusing on Dora, which is the downtown outdoor refreshment area in Oshkosh. This is an area shown here where citizens can walk around downtown with an open can. Some rules of the program are that the drink must be in a transparent disposable cup or the original can, and the cup must be disposed of in the receptacles on Main Street. With this in mind and all the other downtown events, there's an increase in garbage that needs to be disposed of downtown. And as Val will discuss later, many of the local businesses downtown are currently concerned that Dora will bring in more litter, partially because of where the bins are currently located. Right now, Oshkosh has a total of 17 trash and recycling bins on Main Street. On this map here, we can see that there's diversity among the bins in the Dora area. All the purple and the red are going to be the bins that do not have a label currently, and there's a mix of both plastic and metal receptacles. So we see both permanent and temporary bins, and they're either recycling or trash waste, so they're all kind of mixed together, as we can see. Therefore, we see disorganization among the bins, which are spread out with typically only 1 bin per block. And there are only 2 areas currently that have recycling and trash right next to each other. Here we have some examples of the bin diversity as well as unlabeled bins on Main Street. Since it's hard to tell if a bin is trash or recycling, this leads to misuse of the bins and therefore contamination. Also, due to how sporadic the bin placement is now, people have to walk farther to throw away their trash. However, if a bin isn't in a convenient spot, people will most likely just throw it on the ground. We must keep this area clean not only for the community, but also for the Fox River watershed, since the Fox River, which is already an impaired waterway, according to the DNR, runs along downtown Oshkosh. We must keep this pollution to a minimum, especially since 23,094 pounds of trash have already been removed from the watershed just since 2021. Litter and bad waste management leads to ecosystem and infrastructure damage due to the release of toxic chemicals from litter over time. And in our report, we go into further detail about how important it is to have good waste management for the health and safety of us and our environment. With this in mind, Connor will now introduce our 2 proposals.
As Peyton mentioned, we have 2 proposals to share tonight. One is a permanent approach, while the other is a temporary one. They both involve having bins placed throughout the entire door boundary throughout Main Street, as shown in this map, which represents an ideal layout of trash and recycling receptacles. The proposal suggests having trash and recycling bins paired next to one another on each side of the street. Additionally, both proposals will involve an educational aspect. Educational signage could be added to both of these proposals. Images taken from the Allegheny County recycling website, such as these on the slide, could be attached to the bins. They convey simple messages and can be purchased in bulk to save money. It would be useful to add QR codes to these bins that are linked to local recycling facility websites. The design and placement of educational signage is very important. A study organized by Alon Kingstone looked at various differences that influence the effectiveness of signage. The study found that images are more effective than words, and consistent placement of signage works best to convey messages. Our first proposal is a permanent approach. It involves adding 17 permanent recycling receptacles along Main Street, which matches the number of receptacles that are currently downtown. These bins cost between $400 and $1,000. This is a long-term solution that uses durable metal receptacles. Additionally, these would look similar to the trash bins that are already being used. This would maintain a consistent look and entail a similar emptying process that city workers are familiar with. There are a variety of different bins to choose from. Here are just a few examples. All of these have lids and some have specific openings that encourage correct recycling habits. Our second proposal looks at a temporary approach. This involves adding 17 municipal receptacles to the downtown area. Each of these bins costs approximately $110, making this a cost-effective alternative. Oshkosh citizens are familiar with these bins, so they have a better idea of what to put in them. Also, these bins are easy to empty as they can be directly picked up by waste collection trucks. This is an image that shows our constructed proposal. Laminated images are placed on the sides, and a QR code linked to the Tri-County Recycling's Waste Wizard is placed on top. The Waste Wizard allows people to type in an item, and it will tell them where it goes. In comparison, the permanent approach is long-term and looks better, but is more expensive. The temporary approach is short-term, but cost-effective and easier to empty. As I mentioned earlier, both proposed recycling bins would be placed alongside the current trash bins. Having both bins paired next to each other improves sorting and lessens contamination. According to a study conducted by Shinya Suzuki, placing trash and recycling bins in close proximity to one another promotes proper waste sorting. Even an extra 3 meters of distance between receptacles can lead to lower sorting efficiency. Each of these two proposals have their own barriers, which Valerie will now talk about.
Thank you, Connor. During the construction of the permanent approach, a few barriers came to light. The first of which being that the upfront cost is more expensive, but there are some grants which Chris will talk about later that could potentially help lower this cost. Next, the installation procedure is more intense than the non-permanent approach, as this requires each bin to be bolted to the ground. Another issue with this bin is that the pickup process is more intense, as the garbage trucks must stop, leading to the potential of worker injuries. Worker shortages is another concern, but due to the bins being next to each other, we will not need to add more routes. The next approach, the temporary bins, also has some barriers. These bins are not meant to be permanent, and there are also some durability concerns with them. Due to the bins not being bolted to the ground, people may move or damage them. A possible solution to this would be to add wheel locks to the bins. Despite there being concerns about the durability of the bins, these bins are used residentially and are outside year-long, so they hold up pretty well in the Wisconsin winters, meaning that they are fairly durable. Also, since these bins are cheaper, it would cost less money to replace them than it would for a permanent bin. Another potential barrier is the lid, as some people may not want to open the lid with their hands. However, taking the lid off could potentially be a solution to this. Lastly, these would not be matching the bins that are currently in downtown, causing there to potentially be some cosmetic concerns. Next, the first stakeholder that we talked to was James Robbie, who is the Director of Public Works in Oshkosh. He is heavily involved with the waste management collection in the city of Oshkosh, and this makes him a crucial person in this project. He is currently experiencing a lot of worker shortages, which is a large problem when it comes to the potential addition of more waste bins. Additionally, he is concerned that the addition of more bins will be futile, as many people do not use the bins that are currently there. However, research does show that some people are less likely to litter when there are bins downtown. We also spoke with several downtown businesses over the course of this project. All of the businesses that we spoke to are within the DORA boundaries and are shown on a several block stretch, as on the map that you can see up there. The Varsity Club and Gardinas, both of which are owned by the same person, are located in different areas of the Dora boundary, and both of these businesses have waste and recycling receptacles near them. However, they are still experiencing problems with littering. We also spoke with Twisted Roots Tavern and Terry's Bar, both of which are not within the current range for the placement of waste and recycling receptacles. Both these businesses informed us that they have large issues with littering by their restaurants, especially with Dora. Overall, all of the businesses we spoke with downtown definitely agree that adding additional waste and recycling receptacles will decrease the amount of littering downtown. Next, Chris will talk about benchmarking and costs.
All right, thank you, Val. We talked to a lot of different cities throughout the semester to assess the different ways that Wisconsin cities address the issue of waste management downtown. One example that is most applicable to Oshkosh is Appleton, Wisconsin. Appleton is a great example of successful implementation of a similar project to what we are proposing. In 2014, the city board decided to bolster their downtown health by implementing new recycling and waste receptacles. The city purchased 10 new plastic recycling cans at $400 a receptacle, which cost the city $4,000. When adjusted for inflation, that is roughly $5,000. In the end, the project took roughly 2 years to complete, and many of those receptacles are still in use today, nearly a decade later. When Appleton implemented their new waste receptacles, they took great care in keeping the bins constant, paired next to each other, and marked appropriately. When city officials were asked about usage, they stated that receptacles see constant and heavy usage. This is consistent with the research Connor had stated previously that paired receptacles promote proper sorting and reduce litter. This is applicable to Oshkosh, as Appleton is roughly a similar size to Oshkosh with a similar budget and city style. In addition, Appleton collects their downtown waste on a similar schedule to Oshkosh via the DPW and recycling contractors. Now moving on to the cost a little bit more. Proposal 1 has an estimated upfront cost of $400 to $1,000 per bin, $5,000 to $17,000 total. The very difference is due to what receptacle material is decided is best. Plastic receptacles cost roughly $400 to $600, while metal ornamental recycling bins cost $700 to $1,000. Within the cost, there is the installation cost for the new bins and extra labor costs to empty the bins. Although, like Val discussed before, the installation costs are a one-time event, and tied with that, there is very low maintenance post-purchase and installation, as the bins are durable and bolted to the ground. In addition, the city already empties receptacles downtown, so the addition of the new receptacles would not require any additional pickup routes. Proposal 2 has an estimated upfront cost of $100 to $200 per bin, $1,700 to $3,500 total. Like the other proposal, there's still the concern of needing extra labor to empty the new bins, although like Val has previously mentioned, the city would not need to add any additional routes downtown, as the pre-existing bins are already picked up en route. Unlike the permanent receptacles, there's the potentially high maintenance of the bins being tipped over or broken easily, as they are not as durable or bolted to the ground. But there are solutions to the bins, as they're easily modified and are cost-effective to replace. Moving on to some grants, there are some grants available, especially through the Wisconsin DNR. The Green Tier Legacy Communities, which Oshkosh is already a member of, occasionally offers early access to sustainability grants, which do include recycling and waste management grants. This could be a good option to curb upfront costs. In the end, the addition of new, better designated paired receptacles downtown have low upfront cost, low maintenance, and can have large long-term benefits that can persist in Oshkosh's current system. We urge the city of Oshkosh to look into implementing new recycling downtown to limit litter and sorting issues from Dora and other downtown events, and to continue to bolster their city health and watershed health. Thank you. I would now like to invite the Urban Tree Group to present next.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Connor,
I'm Erin. I'm Hannah. I'm Damari.
and we are going to talk about what the city of Oshkosh could do to better protect their public trees during construction. First, we will mention how urban forestry can contribute to a more sustainable city. Next, we will discuss the views of certain stakeholders and what other cities are doing to protect their trees during construction. And then we will wrap up the presentation by addressing the costs and barriers of our proposed idea. Currently, the city of Oshkosh does not provide any form of concrete guidelines for protecting urban trees. The current standard for tree protection is based upon good faith, with the hopes that the various groups involved will do the right thing in protecting trees. This is not a sustainable standard. we are proposing an ordinance that enforces a tree protection zone to protect trees from construction projects. This is necessary to ensure a healthy, diverse urban forest that will provide many benefits. The ordinance could also help increase the city's canopy cover, which is at 9%, where the average canopy cover in Wisconsin is just above 28%. Since Oshkosh is well below the state average, it is even more important to establish a tree protection zone. Maintaining a healthy urban forest has environmental, social, and economic implications. One environmental impact is the ability to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere through a process called carbon sequestration. According to a study done in 2013, trees that are closer to larger bodies of water can sequester more carbon. Oshkosh can make a significant impact in reducing the amount of carbon in the atmosphere because of its geographical location. Urban forests can also play a vital role in the biodiversity crisis. Trees provide necessary shelter, food, and breeding locations for many animals. The Oshkosh area is also important for bird migration routes because of the city's location relative to the Fox River and Lake Winnebago. As urbanization increases, it is important to maintain a healthy habitat for these animals. It is also shown that there's a significant relationship between tree canopy cover and air pollution. As tree canopy cover increases, air pollutants decrease. Trees remove air pollution by the interception of particulate matter on plant surfaces and the absorption of pollutants through their leaves. According to the U.S. Forest Service, trees remove 17.4 million tons of air pollution per year, with human health effects valued at $6.8 billion. When there is a decline in trees in a city, air pollutants increase, which also increases rates of cardiovascular and respiratory disease. Damage to city forests can lead to excess deaths up to 1.8% from these diseases. This is even more prevalent in low-income communities where there are usually fewer trees. Mental and physical health can also be affected. Spending more time around trees reduces blood pressure, as well as the stress-related hormone cortisol. The risk of depression and anxiety also decrease, while overall mental well-being increases. Protecting existing trees can also be an effective way to reduce energy demand. Trees can help moderate the urban heat island effect, which will reduce the need for air conditioning, and can serve as a protection against cold winds to buildings, which will help lower heating costs. Urban forests can also aid in the management of stormwater. Street trees can intercept stormwater runoff, which can minimize the need for costly stormwater treatment systems. Now I will hand it off to Aaron, who will talk about our recommended action.
We recommend that the City of Oshkosh adopt an ordinance containing a tree protection zone that will aim to ensure the protection of the existing urban tree canopy and tree roots during construction and related activities. Currently, Oshkosh does not have any set standards or guidelines outlining best practices for urban tree protection prior to and during projects. The creation of an ordinance of this kind will help mitigate tree loss and tree damage from construction-related activities. Our recommendation is only the tree protection zone, however, you will hear a few other best practices mentioned throughout the presentation. A tree protection zone is an area that is blocked off where no construction or related activities can occur. This includes storage of equipment, materials, excavation, and other activities. This picture is an example of a tree protection zone where the inner circle is the drip line, which is where the tree canopy ends, and would protect the tree canopy and the trunk. And then the outer circle is the critical root zone, which is where the roots are expected to be growing, and it would prevent root damage and soil damage. The actual size of the tree protection zone is determined by the diameter of the tree, and we will have the different calculations listed in our final report. Let's see. And then there are several cities in Wisconsin that have similar ordinances in place. On the side, we have our different benchmarking examples, all of which had established urban forestry programs, and many had similar practices to the ordinance we are proposing. Further detail for all of these will be provided in our report, but two I would like to highlight tonight are Stevens Point and Minneapolis. Stevens Point recognizes the importance of protecting trees during various forms of construction. They have a document called Forestry Specifications for Construction on Public Lands that is referenced in their municipal code and is included in our report. Within this document, they provide best practices to protect trees during both above and below ground work and provide an excellent example of what Oshkosh could also do in the future. Minneapolis, although bigger than Oshkosh, has an extensive ordinance in place as well for a tree protection zone and also gives a baseline for what Oshkosh could also implement. In addition to their ordinance, they also have a forestry preservation coordinator that makes tree-related recommendations during various phases of projects that would impact urban trees. Although this position is not part of our recommendation, it shows Minneapolis' commitment to a healthy urban forest. And next, Hannah will talk briefly about a few of our stakeholders.
Thank you. All right, so we talked to a variety of stakeholders in order for us to gather their valuable perspectives and input, not only on our proposed action, but as in terms of Oshkosh's urban forest in general. Our stakeholders included Brad Spanbauer, who is the UWO Director of Sustainability, Dr. Misty McPhee, who is an Associate Professor of Environmental Studies at UWO and is also an Oshkosh resident, City Forester Superintendents from Appleton, West Dallas, and McFarland, Wisconsin, as well as a few others. But today I will highlight two key stakeholders, Travis Dirks and Dan Trass. Starting with Travis Dirks, who is the Oshkosh Land Operations Manager, we consider Travis a key stakeholder because he is an expert on the current state of Oshkosh's urban forest, and this ordinance would directly affect his department. He has 10 plus years of work experience in the Land Operations Department and has been the manager since April of 2022. And he identified to us an area of major concern in terms of Oshkosh's urban forest to be tree protection during construction. He explained that oftentimes trees are not accounted for in the planning process, and Travis would be in favor of an action such as this ordinance that requires tree protection during construction. The other key stakeholder I want to discuss is Dan Trass, owner of Ranger Services Incorporated, which is a private forestry company located out of Appleton, Wisconsin, that provides services such as tree planting and pruning, plant health care, and landscape maintenance. We consider Dan a key stakeholder because he has 35 plus years of urban forestry experience in the Fox Valley area. Dan believes that tree removal during construction is completely avoidable and should be avoided at all costs. He also mentioned that it would be beneficial to include a certified arborist in the planning process to ensure that all trees are accounted for before construction even begins. Dan believes that tree protection should be as important as any other area of the project. I would like to include this quote from our conversation with Dan that reads, "Trees are the only part of an infrastructure that increases its value as it ages. A sidewalk is the same value its first day or 30 years later. Construction damage kills more trees nationwide than any other factor." Next, I will hand it over to Damari to discuss costs and barriers of our proposal as well as funding opportunities.
So we are proposing an ordinance which would be of minimal cost to the city of Oshkosh. Primarily, costs will be reflected in terms of time needed for inspection of trees on project site. This could prolong the project if conflict arises. Also, there needs to be random inspections during construction to minimize noncompliance. The institutional nature of the requirement allows for enforceable action to correct, mitigate, or assess for damages as appropriate. Ultimately, tree protection zone barrier cost is a bid line item that falls under the project cost. So if the residents of Oshkosh are not aware of the benefits that trees in urban areas bring, then they might not care to protect them. To overcome this barrier, public education and outreach is necessary so citizens are more informed. Informed citizens would more likely than not want to protect trees and could even help enforce the ordinance. Another impediment to this project could come from the construction companies themselves. The main cost of protecting trees during construction would be paid for by these companies in the form of materials for barriers like construction fences, stakes, and signs. However, the project can work if the community and construction companies are educated and the ordinance is enforced. Presented here is an example of what we consider a missed opportunity. The picture shows the construction site of Bank First on Kohler Street here in Oshkosh. As you can see, a number of mature trees were cut down to make way for the building and extensive pavement for vehicles. With a tree protection ordinance in place, situations like these could be avoided. So there are various funding opportunities available for urban forestry projects. There is the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources regular forestry grant, which ranges from $1,000 to $25,000, and it is eligible for tree ordinance development and revision. Another opportunity lies with the governor's biennial budget, who has increased funding for urban forestry grants. In 2024, the annual allotment will increase by $175,000 to further fund urban forestry projects. In all, urban forests provide numerous ecosystem services that benefit the community. From an environmental, social, and economic standpoint, we spoke on other regions that have good tree protection ordinances like Stevens Point, Wisconsin, and Minneapolis, Minnesota, We have also provided the input of various experts who agree that tree protection is essential for a healthy urban tree canopy. And we have laid out some of the potential costs and barriers associated. To reiterate, the benefits of trees are linked to the size of the tree, meaning that benefits are maximized for mature trees. This calls for the prioritization of protecting established mature trees through the implementation of a tree protection zone. Thank you. That is all. Would you please welcome my colleagues, which will be presenting on permeable pavements in residential zones.
Y'all ready? Great. All right. Well, good evening, folks. My name is Sarah.
I'm Noah. I'm Jake.
And we're here tonight to talk about why permeable pavement driveways should be permitted in the city of Oshkosh. Oops, we're not even on our page. Sorry about that. Well, there's our introduction slide. So, I'll begin by providing a background, begin by providing background information and context for our proposal. Then I'll detail our specific recommended action. Noah will present the feedback and concerns that we received from a few local stakeholders and offer ways to address their concerns. Jake will utilize Green Bay as a benchmarking example and discuss the financial aspects that are associated with permeable pavements. And finally, Caitlin will conclude our presentation by highlighting how permeable pavements can promote a more sustainable Oshkosh. So our group is proposing a zoning ordinance update that will allow the installation of for the installation of permeable pavements and residential driveways in the city of Oshkosh. So permeable pavements are a porous alternative to traditional surfacing materials that are also used as a technique for stormwater management. They work by allowing precipitation and melt to infiltrate directly into the soil rather than run off into storm drains. The infiltration process itself actually provides pollutant concentration reduction benefits, which result in cleaner water recharging our groundwater. On non-porous surfaces, stormwater runoff would either directly or indirectly flow into surface water bodies without any reduction in pollution concentrations. So why do we, the citizens of Oshkosh, need permeable pavements? Stormwater runoff introduces pollutants into surface water bodies, and these pollutants can cause growth of things like harmful algal blooms, which pose health risks to plants, humans, and animals alike. Additionally, excessive pollutant concentrations can cause the DNR to declare a water body as impaired. The Wisconsin DNR defines an impaired water body as a water body that fails to meet Clean Water Act quality standards. According to the Wisconsin DNR's 2024 drafted water conditions list, Lake Winnebago is actually going to be reintroduced to the list as an impaired water body due to non-point source E. coli pollution. This designation is particularly concerning given the fact that Lake Winnebago is our sole source for drinking water. As I and many other Oshkosh residents know, flooding has been a historically prominent issue here. These photos are from a June 2008 major flooding event that resulted in millions of dollars worth of structural damage and thousands of resident applications for emergency federal assistance. In preparation for future flooding events, the city of Oshkosh has invested substantial amounts of money and effort into stormwater management improvements, and currently improvements are underway to the city's drainage system. Oshkosh Public Works Director James Robbie has asserted that a partnership between the city and the residents is necessary to prevent flooding issues. We believe that residents can play a more active role in this flooding issue prevention by being allowed to install permeable pavements in their driveways. So specifically, we are recommending an amendment to Article 7, Section 30-175 of the City of Oshkosh zoning ordinance. Under surfacing standards, we specifically recommend adding permeable pavements as an acceptable construction material for off-street parking. And we do feel that it would be advantageous to also include a technical definition for permeable pavements based off of the Wisconsin DNR 1008 standard. Our proposed amendment is actually based on a similar code that's being used currently in Green Bay. We have included copies of our proposed ordinance update as well as Green Bay's current code and our final report that you can utilize on your own to kind of review. And based on our benchmarking research, we do feel that the implementation of a similarly structured ordinance would be a great starting place to bring residential permeable pavements to the city of Oshkosh. So now I will hand it off to Noah to discuss what we've learned from our stakeholders.
Thank you, Sarah. We talked to a number of stakeholders, all of which will be available in our final report. Today, however, I wanted to bring to your attention one of our key stakeholders, Mr. James Robbie, the Director of Public Works for the City of Oshkosh. Mr. Robbie is very much for the use of permeable pavers in the city. He thinks that they're a great best management practice in the right situations. The city actually has seen great results from several permeable pavement systems at the fire station, the senior center, and the YMCA downtown. He, however, is not in favor for the residential use due to a number of concerns that he listed for us. The first has to do with the potential of permeable pavement leading to increased basement flooding. Most Oshkosh driveways are nearly flush with the foundations of the buildings that they are serving, making it very easy for them to become hydrologically connected. This is something that we believe could be combated with the DNR 1008 technical standard. The standard specifically states that permeable pavements must be at least 10 feet away from any existing foundations or have a plastic liner under affected areas as needed. The pictured driveway is likely what the easiest solution to this basement flooding problem would look like, with the permeable pavement in front of the house and then traditional concrete being used for the portions of the driveway that are flush with the house. Concerns over lack of community education were also brought to our attention. It is thought that the general Oshkosh community has little awareness of permeable pavements and other green infrastructure solutions. Rain gardens and rain barrels have seen little adoption in the city, even with financial incentives to help improve their use. However, according to Dr. Maureen Muldoon, a professor of hydrogeology and one of our other stakeholders, the whole point of allowing residential use of green infrastructure is to allow residents to get involved and increase their awareness of stormwater issues. Permeable pavements on residential property will allow the residents to think about what's in their water and where their water is going. A final concern that was brought to our attention had to do with the cost of permeable pavements. The installation cost of permeable pavements can be rather high, and due to the need for contractors and/or engineers, on top of the existing material costs. We feel that some of the benchmarking cities we reviewed had found solutions for this problem using things like grants and loan programs. To tell you more about these, I'll hand it over to Jake.
Thank you, Noah. So when looking at communities that allow residents to use pervious pavements, we focused our attention on the Midwest. In doing so, we found 4 key cities implementing this form of green infrastructure very well in order to manage stormwater. Today we'll be focusing on the city of Green Bay, as it has similar demographics and environmental conditions to that of Oshkosh. In 2019, the city conducted a code audit using a third-party consulting firm to implement pervious pavements into the surfacing code. This provides a green infrastructure options to residents to help manage the city's stormwater. The project took about 2 years to complete and required input from both residents and city officials. While it was costly, the city was able to utilize a federal grant to fund all aspects of the audit. During this process, the city found education of the code to be important in order to effectively communicate the new changes. To increase participation, the city created various stormwater funding initiatives. Using stormwater utility fees, a revolving loan fund was created, allowing residents to borrow up to $10,000 over a 10-year term in order to install permeable pavement driveways. The loans and funds are approved by the Public Works Department to ensure they are suitable for the building site. Large-scale projects are able to apply for the Stormwater Improvement Grant that was created to help at-risk communities. Its goal is to improve environmental quality while increasing property values in that area. The cost of these projects will be the responsibility of the installing homeowner. As new technologies develop, the price of permeable pavements continues to fall and is comparable to that of other impermeable options. Annual maintenance is recommended in order to retain optimal performance, which generally results in no costly emergency maintenance, as was found by the University of New Hampshire Stormwater Center. During the winter months, salt usage is decreased as the permeable pavement acts as a storage for salt, releasing it slowly over time. In order for citizens to implement permeable pavement, the City of Oshkosh will need to rewrite the code, and it has proven beneficial to offer education surrounding this topic, which can be done by interacting with the community during the code writing. Doing so will result in a cost to the city, especially if funding initiatives are offered to residents. However, through the use of federal and state grants, these costs can be largely offset. Now, Caitlin will tell you about the sustainability benefits of pervious pavers.
Thank you. Improved stormwater management is imperative to sufficiently address local problems in Oshkosh. The implementation of permeable pavement in residential areas would promote sustainable and environmental objectives of the city. Permeable pavements help to reestablish a more natural hydrological balance through improved infiltration and storage, rather than allowing the water to flow as it would in the urban water cycle. They also have a higher frictional resistance than conventional pavement, which improves freeze-thaw responses and winter preparedness. As Sarah previously mentioned, permeable pavements promote the reduction of pollutants either physically, chemically, or biologically. Temperature reduction of urban runoff as a result of permeable pavement mitigates the effects of runoff on the surrounding environment. Such implementation would also result in decreased weathering on local infrastructure. In conclusion, we propose that Oshkosh's zoning ordinance should allow for the installation of permeable pavement in residential areas. While the use of permeable pavement alone may not address all of the city's concerns, the implementation of a climate resiliency plan would support the vast growing needs of the local community in the face of a changing climate. We urge the City of Oshkosh to consider the positive impacts this simple ordinance change can bring, and to embrace a sustainable future for our community. Together we can take a significant step towards a more resilient and water-conscious community. Thank you for your time, and now we'll turn it over to the next group to discuss climate resiliency.
Good evening. My name is Blade.
I'm Riley.
Today, we are going to propose that the City of Oshkosh create a climate resilience plan. For the next 10 minutes, we will cover climate change and its effects, climate resilience, costs and barriers of said resilience, what other cities are doing, what local community members think, and potential sources of funding. First, a little background information. Climate change is an existential threat. The problem with managing it is that it is fundamentally uncertain, meaning that we cannot predict the exact specifics of what will happen nor how it will happen. However, this is no reason to delay action. This uncertainty is normal and expected. With reasonable accuracy, we can predict some of the effects that Oshkosh will face, such as some social effects. So, climate change is a global phenomenon, and we are seeing effects here. However, other areas are being hit harder, making our area, the Great Lakes region, a likely place for climate migrants to seek shelter. With the abundance of fresh water, our region could be appealing for this reason. This could lead to the recognition of some places in the Midwest as climate havens, potentially including Oshkosh. Climate change will also make existing social inequalities, such as economic disparities, worse, which, combined with the fact that cities will be hit by climate change the hardest, does not paint a pretty picture. Those are only a few of the social effects. There are likely to be many more, but let's take a look at some economic effects. So the previous group mentioned flooding, which is a big concern for Oshkosh, but other climatic events are a concern too, such as heat waves and dry spells. These all cause infrastructural damage that is costly to repair. The labor sector is at risk as well. A 2020 study found that damages to the labor sector increases as temperature increases. This graph, you can see it without the pointer. This graph is from that study, and it shows that labor damage per capita per degree of warming, and the red dots are the Midwest, and sure enough, they are increasing as temperature increases. That same study found that the overall economic damage the Midwest could face is about $6 billion per degree Celsius of change. Oshkosh is a city, and cities do not exist alone. Cities require an influx of resources in order to grow economically, And because we are connected to the wider world via a network of commerce and trade, this means that climatic events on the other side of the world could affect us here. A different study I found said that the effects of climate change could make economic growth, quote, difficult, if not impossible. What can we do about all this? I'll hand it off to Noah, who will explain climate resilience.
Thank you, Blade. The U.S. Global Change Research Program defines resilience as the ability to prepare for threats and hazards, adapt to changing conditions, while withstanding and recovering rapidly from adverse conditions and disruptions. As Blade mentioned, uncertainty is a big part of climate change, and a climate resiliency plan is one tool to help assure some certainty in the midst of massive uncertainty. The steps to develop a climate resiliency plan include understanding exposure, assessing vulnerability and risk, investigating options, prioritizing and planning, and finally, taking action. Oshkosh needs a climate resiliency plan because every inch of this planet is already being affected by climate change, and taking a proactive approach such as this will save lives, money, resources, and time. Now, moving on from the structure of the plan itself, I will now discuss some of the costs associated with implementing such a plan. A very important consideration worth noting is that cost is nuanced and complex, just like climate change. Some major factors that affect cost include the overall scope of the project, the details of current infrastructure, and the public's engagement and support. In other words, you get what you pay for. The public opinion, along with political will, can also prove to be some of the biggest barriers for a project like this. However, a climate resilience consulting agency will prove useful in the formulation of this plan and can also work aside these barriers. Common Spark Consulting curated a climate action plan for $15,000 for the city of Duluth. Several consulting agencies, along with the cities they helped, will be provided in our final report. The university utilized a consulting agency when they developed their climate action plan and should be contacted to solidify collaborative efforts for a citywide climate action project. The city of Oshkosh is in a good spot as the university and surrounding communities already have plans, and it would be in the city's best interest to reach out to the campus's sustainability faculty to collaborate on such a plan and work together where there is overlap. And with that, I will now pass it off to Riley, who will be discussing our benchmarking examples and stakeholders in more detail.
Thank you, Noah. As part of the research process, we examined other cities in the Midwest to understand how they are managing climate change. Tonight, I will share 2 examples of cities who created a plan using different developmental strategies. The first city is Appleton, Wisconsin. Appleton is a city we knew we wanted to look into as it's our neighbor to the north. Appleton developed a climate action plan back in 2020. The city's main strategy for creating this plan was implementing a city task force that specifically focused on resilience, climate mitigation, and adaptation. The big cost of this plan's development was time and dedication. It took roughly a year for the plan to be created. It contains almost 50 recommendations and specific action steps to achieve each recommendation. The next city is Duluth, Minnesota. Duluth is a great example of how they are accelerating into action while also marketing themselves as a climate haven. Duluth has already seen an increase in their population because of their preparedness. As Noah mentioned earlier, Duluth's main source of development for their plan came from a consultant company and also an award through the Great Plains Institute, where they received federal funding, unlike Appleton, where they specifically formulated a team to implement a plan. The city's climate action work plan totaled around $15,000 to create, and its goals are to set the groundwork for sustainable implementation and build programs that focus on mitigation, resilience, and accelerating climate action. During our research, we also spoke to a lot of stakeholders who shared valuable insight and knowledge to our project. One of our stakeholders is Brad Spanbauer. Brad is the Director of Sustainability for UW-Oshkosh and also a member of the Sustainability Advisory Board. Our meeting with Brad was greatly beneficial in our research, as Brad is very knowledgeable and passionate about sustainability. Brad believes that an implementation of a resiliency plan is the best way for the city to be prepared for future climate impacts. He hopes the plan would be efficient and actionable, as the science and technology are readily available to help create a plan. Another stakeholder we talked to was Margie Davey. Margie is a member of the Oshkosh Sustainability Board and a local resident. She believes that the planning process will help bring awareness and attention to the dangers of climate change. Investigating potential coping mechanisms before they are needed are essential for a climate resiliency plan and the long-term health of the city. Overall, she believes the city would benefit from a plan as they could budget for the long term. Now Leah will be discussing the uncertainty that comes with facing climate change.
Thank you, Riley.
Amidst the uncertainty of climate change in Wisconsin, our state faces escalating challenges in many different regions. The increase in rainfall and subsequent flood risks demand for proactive strategies to fortify this community. The Wisconsin Initiative on Climate Change Impacts released projections of a 4 to 9 degree Fahrenheit temperature increase by 2050, which is one of the many areas that expresses the urgency of our situation. The warming trend threatens not only our climate but also key economic sectors of this state, notably impacting winter tourism and agricultural practices. Let's navigate this uncertainty with preparedness and resilience, ensuring a sustainable future for Oshkosh and for Wisconsin as a whole. And really quickly, if we look at this graph, this was posted by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and it's showing the exponential growth of rainfall over the Great Lakes in the last 20 years or so. Securing funding will help to develop and implement Oshkosh's climate resiliency plan. There are 3 noteworthy grant options that are available to us. The first is the Federal Climate Pollution Reduction Act, or CPRG, which is administered by the Environmental Protection Agency. With a substantial $5 billion allocation, CPRG is divided into planning and implementing phases, which allows for flexibility throughout the planning process. Another promising avenue is the Environmental Justice and Climate Resilience Grant, which was established in 2021. This grant seeks to address environmental and health issues that will be amplified by a changing climate. Additionally, exploring Wisconsin's Department of Natural Resources and their grants can also offer region-specific opportunities for our state. There are a multitude of local grants offered by the DNR that look to fund a variety of sustainable changes in local municipalities like ours. Together, these funding resources provide a robust foundation to support the creation and implementation of a climate resilience plan. The importance of climate resilience in Oshkosh cannot be overstated. As we've explored the potential social and economic impacts of climate change, it becomes clear that uncertainty should not paralyze us, but rather propel us into action. The idea to propose a climate resilience plan is not just a response to threats, but rather it's a forward-thinking strategy that positions Oshkosh to thrive during times of uncertainty and during times of challenge. Learning from the experiences of other Midwest cities, we recognize the power of collaboration, community engagement, and inclusive planning. Implementing a plan of resilience would help to ensure a happier and healthier community for the entirety of Oshkosh. On behalf of my group and also our whole class, we want to just thank you for taking time to listen to our presentations and for our ideas of the future. Thank you.
Thank you all so very much. Do we have any questions for any of these groups?
Yeah.
Which group would you like to start with at the very beginning?
Let me find it. Hold on. Go by all means. If someone else has one, go for it.
Brad,
I'm good for right now.
you're good tonight?
You were called down too.
You guys must have done a really good job, is all I can say.
The permeable pavement group. I think maybe the way you were looking at the zoning code on the internet was maybe showing you the wrong lettering. I just make a note. It's section 30-175. I think it's R. It shouldn't be a number afterward. It should be a letter.
Yeah,
so.
We were looking in it. I didn't see any R's anywhere.
Okay.
It had the surfacing standards, and then it was like an A and B point.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Touch base with me, one of you, and I can give you the correct code sec. I just want your report to be correct. So that wasn't a question. It was more of a sidebar. No. Oh, sorry.
Yes, it
You're
was.
fine.
Anyone else have any questions for any of the groups?
Come on, we got to come up with something.
Well, the waste management group, I did have a question or two for them, if they want to approach the microphone, or a representative from the group or whatever.
One brave soul.
I know you discussed one city that you had Appleton that was comparable, but you had looked at some other cities too, like Stevens Point, and I was just curious how closely they resembled what you were proposing for us or what Appleton has, or if they had some totally different approaches.
So they quite recently went through a similar process. They did not implement recycling, but they implemented new waste management bins downtown. And with that, they had a Canvas program. So they had like local schools come and paint the bins. So it'd be like recycle or, throw your garbage out here for watershed health. So they recently went through that, but they just didn't implement the recycling like we were proposing.
Okay, and the other cities, did they have?
To my knowledge, yes, they had similar downtown, but Appleton was the only one that had the recycling paired. So the other ones just had kind of comparable to what Oshkosh had, where it was just kind of sporadic all over the place, which is why Appleton was one of our key benchmarks.
Well, and of course with Dora, that's what we would want anyway,
correct.
so. Okay, that was the only question I had for your group.
Sounds good. Any other questions?
I was curious about the businesses on Main Street that you guys quoted saying that they believe there is a littering problem.
Correct.
I think that's a really important part of your guys' report, to just really make sure you hone in on that a little bit. Get some quotes, I think, would be good. Because I think if there's they would know best, right? Those business owners, they're probably out there picking it up themselves the next day, so.
And that's what a lot of them had to say, especially since I think they cut the bins cut off at Parkway. So a lot of the the businesses up on that side, they have a big problem with it because they're still included in the door zone. They just don't have the receptacles. So a lot of the businesses up there had an issue with picking up waste.
Okay.
Did anybody mention anything about the farmer's market during your discussions?
We talked to the special events coordinator, and we talked about if there was a requirement about having receptacles, and they said that was a big hurdle that might be a kind of a barrier to a lot of potential programs that Oshkosh might want to host. So there's not a specific requirement to my knowledge. I'll have to check back to the report, but that's about all I can say on it because I don't quite know off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone, anything else?
I'll make a comment about the tree construction. I thought it was great that Travis was on board with that, although he's not going to be the one who would have to actively, be implementing that ordinance, or it would be up to those contractors. Ultimately, it sounds like a construction project would be more expensive if the city decided to adopt that. But I think that's great that you guys have Travis's back, or he's got you guys' back on that, so it's a good start.
And I was a little disappointed in how little tree cover we have in Oshkosh compared to the rest of Wisconsin.
Very disappointing.
Yes. Of course, we used to have a lot more trees. They just keep dying. So diversity, that's what Travis is working on. Diversity is good.
We're lucky to have him.
Yes. Okay, last call, y'all. Okay, I think you guys did such a fantastic
Great job.
on your
Yeah.
presentations. We have nothing left.
One more round of applause.
Okay.
We'll be short.
More than welcome to hang
You're
out.
Break
welcome.
while they exit.
We'll give you guys a second to get out before we continue. Seeing as how y'all were talking and all. Yeah. Okay, moving on with our meeting then.
Bye, Sarah. Good to see you. Good job.
You too, Mike.
Is there anything else exciting?
Everything we do.
Oh, come on.
Our esteemed council member may join us should he wish. The Environmental Leadership Award, we have noticed that we are going to have some discussion on that. Again, just a call for nominations for it. We have received some. But of course, we can always have more. And I was informed after the last meeting that I was here to discuss this, at, which was 2 meetings ago, that the city won't be doing a, what's that called?
In person?
State of the city this year. It's going to be, so this will be something that will just be done during a council meeting probably, which gave us a little bit more leeway with timing or whatever. So I wanted to let you know that. Was there any other comments on the Environmental Leadership Award?
Remind me, what is the deadline?
I think that we were talking like January initially,
By
so that we
January.
could,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
If you need a little more time for something, well, we have a little leeway now.
Okay.
Okay, moving on then to agenda items for future meetings.
Did you guys already review this nominee? Or,
No, but I don't think we should do that right now.
oh, we shouldn't. Okay, my bad. I missed that part.
Oh, well, I just don't know if there will be any others that are also submitted. But, and I know that we're the only ones seeing this now. It's not on TV, but it might, unless you have questions about any of this, in which case we can direct them to the nominator. Nominator, is that the right word? The person who nominated the nominee.
Okay.
Got it.
So we'll continue to receive applications and then go over these in January.
Correct. And of course, remember, there can be more than one award given. It could be to a group or a business or an individual. And this one was for a very involved individual, obviously. Okay, anything else on the environmental award? Okay, moving on then to agenda items for future meetings. Did you have some winter farmers market dates that you had specifically requested? I got ready to fill out the form and I could not find those dates. And I apologize. I know that I skipped a meeting. That was terrible of me.
We talked
You
about-
want me
From
here.
last week.
We talked about January 6th, February 17th, and March 9th.
Yep. That's what I
January
have.
6th, February
17th,
17, and March.
9th.
Okay, I will get that paperwork in tomorrow then and see what we can do with that. And I will let you know, Brandon, so that we can go ahead and if we do get some of those dates, we can make sure we get people scheduled, because it'll be before our next meeting or right around it.
It'll be fast.
A couple of days before the last meeting, that'd be pretty quick, yeah.
Yeah,
We should
maybe.
probably talk about that
Yeah.
ahead of time. We had discussed having some future presentations. I don't know if people have suggestions for things you'd like to see us cover here so that we can use it as part of our education and outreach to the community, or things that we need to be informed about. As always, if you think of something that should be covered, please let Brandon or Emma know so that we can get that scheduled. And then at our next meeting in,
January?
this is December, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I had, that I didn't miss something there. Okay, at our January meeting, which is changed from Monday to Thursday,
Correct.
we'll be discussing our long-term goals our short-term goals for 2024 and our long-term goals. And I don't know if we'll have the student input available yet by then.
I mean, I think the
That's-
semester's done, but like on the 17th or
I
something,
think
right?
we usually get it in time
Yeah.
for that so that we can, but we also have our notes here that we can review. There were some good things there. We can
Yeah, I
work
would
with
say,
this.
I mean, I don't know what this group is particularly honing in on, but I would be interested to have that conversation in January at a workshop.
Yeah, I mean, I
Absolutely.
felt like all four were
Really good.
worthwhile spending some time to think about implementation.
Yes, and doable.
Yeah.
Definitely doable,
Yeah.
especially waste management.
So, okay, well then with that, our next meeting will be on Thursday, January 4th in this very room. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.